Hello there. So today I'm going to show you how to do this really cool effect with scrolling past multiple videos on 3D planes. Let's get started. Welcome back. I'm Fuzzy D, and this is Fuzzy Tutorials. So you can see that we've got our project up here. Now this is the one I just showed you on the intro. And we're just going to take a look at the existing code I've got here in my Fusion. So we're just going to open this up in Fusion and drag this stuff over. And just make a little more room. Okay, I'm just using my middle mouse button here. And we're going to make a couple changes. So I'm going to arrange my tools to grid. And I'm going to go to options. And we're going to turn on orthogonal pipes. I just find this a little easier to follow. It's just a personal preference. And arrange to grid will make it snap to positions on the grid, so it makes it easier to line up the nodes. Okay, so you can see we've got a few items here. So we've got a plane 3D for each one of these videos that we're looking at. So if we move back in the timeline, you can see we start there and it winds up over here. So we've got a separate one of these with its own clip attached to it, and a couple of these I needed to do a little color correction on, so I've got a brightness and contrast node, and this pipes into a merge 3D. And then we've got our 3D text, we've got our camera, and this is how we're actually panning through stuff, is with the camera. We're not actually moving anything, except for the 3D text that does a little moving right at the very end. And we've of course got our renderer 3D, and we've got some ambient light and a little point light that's for the text up here. And then this is our background clip, and that comes in on the background of our merge. And then we've got our media out. Okay, so we're just going to go back to the edit page, and I'm going to take you through building this right from the ground up. So we're just going to go over to a new section here. We're just going to go over here to our effects, and I'm going to grab a fusion composition. You could also go up here and right click and add fusion composition. That's the way I used to do it all the time because of a bug, but they've since fixed that bug. And I'm just going to use my middle mouse button and drag my timeline over a bit, and we're going to lengthen this out to so we need 20 seconds altogether. And you'll notice we've got our seconds and frames listed here in that little black box you see. So we're just going to make sure our playhead's over this and select it. And we'll jump into the Fusion tab. And let me move my big head out of the way. Okay. And let's just pull our media out over here. All right, so I'm just going to grab my footage here. And I've just got a bunch of clips here. So we're just going to grab all these then we're going to hold our Alt key down while we drag it to the work area here. And the reason I used the Alt key was to make sure I just grabbed the video. We don't want the audio clips that are attached to them. I mean, you could do that if you wanted, but that's not what we want here. And need a little more working room here for the moment. All right. Now we've got to see which one is which here. Okay. We're looking for the one we're going to use as our background clip. I think that's the one here. Just going to play through a little bit. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, so we're just going to grab that and pull that off to the side. And pop these down there. All right. And just so that we don't lose track of what we're doing here, I'm just going to give us a little more viewer space there. And I'm going to rename these. Okay. Now I'm just going to fast forward. You don't need to watch me do this. Okay, we're just about done with all that. I forgot that I didn't show you how I'm actually doing the renaming. So you've got a couple of choices. You can either right click and you can choose rename, or you can just hit F2. Now you can't put spaces in here. It'll just strip them out when you save it. So if you want space in between them, you can use an underscore. That's what I do anyway. Okay, I'm just going to grab a 3D plane and we're going to put that up on our right viewer. And we're just going to bring this up so that it's actually up above our actual working plane. And then we're just going to copy that. So in this case, Control C. If you're on a Mac, it'll be Command. If you're on a Mac, it'll be Command C. And then we're just going to click off of that. And I'll hit Control V. And we'll just repeat that a few times. And we're going to need a 3D merge. And we're also going to need a camera. And we're going to need a 3D render. Or renderer 3D. And we're also going to need our, oh, wrong thing here, sorry. Oh, I guess that is what we wanted. So we need a merge. That's going to go over here. And so we just got to connect up a few things here. Forgot to rename that one. Okay, we're going to pipe that to our background. Our render 3D is going in our foreground. And our merge 3D is going there. I'm going to connect our camera to our merge 3D. And we're going to connect all of our image planes. Actually, before we do that, let's actually move some stuff around here. So I'm going to display these actually now in the left-hand viewer. And we've got to go grab our media out. Okay. And we're going to display our media out in our right-hand viewer. All right. So let's connect up all of our videos to our image planes. Now I'm not bothered with renaming on all of these image planes because it's pretty evident what they're connected to. And I'm not going to bother putting in the color correction nodes. They're not really necessary. Just something I added to make a couple of the videos look better. And then we're going to connect all these to our merge 3D. Okay. And I'm kind of OCD about keeping stuff neat and tidy here. So let's put our merge 3D up on our primary viewer here. And I'm just using my Alt key to move around stuff here. I just want to get this kind of straight on. Okay. So now we're just going to take these and place them where we want them. Oh, and I just wanted to give a shout out to the recent Resolve Con. I actually got this idea from them and kind of ran with it. So I'll make sure I put a link in the description. There's a whole bunch of classes in that Resolve Con. It's several hours worth of instruction that you'll probably find useful. So I'll make sure to drop a link in the description for that. And now you could use your arrows here to move them down. I'm actually going to use my controls over here because it lets me just place stuff a little more exact. So I'm going to actually move that one over to the left. You'll see why in a minute. And we want that at 1.02 or negative 1.02. And you'll notice that there's nothing showing up there. Okay, I figured it out. I had forgotten that this is actually a really short clip compared to the rest of them. And I was sitting way over here in the timeline. So I just had to bring it back to about here. Now this is actually going to be our first one. So we're going to need to move our points at where we want it to start and stop, and we'll do a freeze frame. But we'll get into that here in a minute. So I want to finish placing the rest of these. So we're just going to move stuff around a little bit. So we've got our first 3 placed here. So we'll take this one and we're going to change its Y position. Now that's just showing black, so we're going to grab the controls right here, or grab the actual media in of it, and we'll just move our trim position until it shows up. And I'm just grabbing the number itself instead of the slider because that's going to move it slower. Okay, I got that in the right spot. We'll see why it's important to be moving these trim points around later. Okay, so we'll go to the next one here. And actually we need to grab the previous one. So it's on there at the same time. I just need to look up and copy our Y coordinate. And we're just going to paste that value in there. And then we're going to move our X point. We want that at 1.02. And we'll grab the next one. Now I'll just finish getting these positioned and we'll come back. All right, we're just about done. You can see I forgot to connect this one. Either that or I accidentally disconnected it. And we'll just leave that one in place. You can see that we're not seeing this stuff over here in our right viewer. We've got to go turn on a couple of things. So we need to enable our lighting and shadows on our 3D renderer. Pass through our lights. Okay, now we've got to take our camera and move it back so we can see something here. Now everything's black because we haven't put in a light source yet. Now what I'm doing to resize stuff here is I'm holding down my middle button and my left button and rolling my trackball to the left, or you'd be moving your mouse to the left. Okay. And we're just using the Alt button just to kind of position ourselves so we can move that camera a little better. Now, we're going to want to actually show a little 3D perspective here with this, which is why we're doing this with the 3D planes. So we're going to move our camera's position here a bit, and then we're going to change where it's pointing. Okay, let's grab our camera here. Now there's other ways that you can rotate the camera. I just find this a little easier to deal with. So just going to change our Y position here. Okay, that's probably enough of a 3D perspective to get the effect that we're looking for, but I think I'll give it just a little bit more. So I'm just going to move the camera a little bit further. And we'll change how it's pointing. Okay, so let's grab some ambient light here. So we can select our Merge 3D, and then we can hit the Control space bar. If you're on a Mac, then it's Shift space bar. And we want lighting, so we'll just punch in light, and then we're looking for some ambient light to start with. And you can see we've got a dim picture showing up here. So we're just going to turn up our intensity a bit until we get stuff lit up about the way we want it. And I'm just going to leave it right about there, I think. So 0.945, but use whatever works for you. Okay, now we're going to move our camera a little bit more, and we're going to zoom it back in. So let's change our camera position a bit here. Okay, and we'll move our Z position. Yeah, let me see, we want it closer. I guess I should have gotten that correct before we had it turned. All right. No. I'll just play with this a bit, fast forward it for you. Okay, now in my case, I wanted a shorter intro. So I started with it moved in already onto frame a bit, but you could start it so it's off of frame. It's completely up to you. But right now we haven't set any animations, so we're not locked into anything yet. So I'm just going to continue to tweak this a little bit until I get it kind of where I want it. Okay, now we got to start tweaking some other things. All right, we're back. So you'll notice things have kind of jumped around a bit, and what happened is when I was trying to get the positioning and everything just right to be able to start the animation, my DaVinci crashed. So I had to go in and do a file recovery and do some bug reports to Blackmagic and that kind of thing. So this is actually a couple days later that I'm finishing this up. So I've gotten the camera position and stuff where I want it. You'll notice it's not quite so far off to the side. I had the 3D angling and stuff was a little bit too much. So I went back and checked some settings with my old project, and these numbers don't match exactly to the original, but they should work pretty good. So basically you want it you want it coming in fairly large like this, and we'll need to tune the background video in a little bit. Right now we just want to get kind of the positioning and everything the way we want it. So you have to decide at this point how much of the background video you want appearing before the movement past these 3D planes begins. And you have to decide whether you're going to start with it partly on screen like I did for a shorter sequence, or if you want to have it completely off screen when you start. That's really a kind of a personal preference thing. And at this point, now that we've got everything positioned and the camera angled the way we want it, we're going to move the position of the camera. We're not going to rotate it for this effect. Now you could do the rotation instead, but what'll happen is your 3D perspective is going to change as the camera angle changes. So for this particular effect, I'm using camera movement, and I'm just adjusting the X and the Y positions. I'm not adjusting the Z position once we actually start the sequence. So being that I'm kind of showing you how I did the one that I showed you at the beginning, we're going to start it in that same position. And so now we're going to go and look at our main background stuff here, and we're going to get it to a better part of the video. So to do that, I'm going to adjust this trim at the beginning. So we're just going to move it until it's kind of where we want it. And I think that's about where I started it before. And then we're just going to play through that a little bit, see how that looks for what's showing. And I think that's going to be pretty good. Yeah, I think that's going to work. And you'll notice that that one video pane disappeared because the video ended, but I'm going to show you how to deal with that. So, but we're just building stuff one at a time here. So we're going to go back to the beginning. Okay. So now, I think on mine, I went about 2/3 of the way through for the final upper corner position. And then I did a different type of movement to move the rest of the video fairly quickly off screen to show the 3D text better. And now I haven't put in the 3D text at this point, although we could, because it's placed along with the rest of the stuff, and then it's moved a little separately from the camera position. But you'll see how that works when we get up to that point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move it to about frame 380. And then we're going to change our... Oh, actually, let's go fix this other thing here first. Sorry about that, folks. Let me go back to where this shows up again. And we'll move this slowly along until this disappears. Okay, we'll bring it back. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to hold the last frame. Oh, not that video. We got to select the right one here. So I'm going to grab this one, make sure that's highlighted. And then we're going to hold the last frame. And we only need to hold it until it's going to be out of view. So I'm just going to give it a little more. Probably, that's probably even too much, but that's fine. So now if we move this along, we'll see it no longer disappears. Okay, and that's what we want. And we also want to make sure that it's going to move at the right spot. For when it's going by the viewport. But we can't do that until we actually set up the movement for the 3D camera. So we're going to go back to selecting the 3D camera. And then we're going to make our movements here. So this is going to go off to the right, and then we've got to lower down. Okay, to about there. Now I don't remember off the top of my head whether I had the lettering above this one or coming in on the tail of this one. It doesn't really much matter, it's just a personal preference. So I think we're going to do it like that. And I forgot to turn on the keyframing. Okay. So I don't think I'll edit this out just because sometimes it's good to see the mistakes that are easy to make. So I'm going to hit my Control Z and we'll go back to the beginning here. Sorry about that, folks. All right, so we need to turn on keyframes for X and Y. Okay, now we'll go to our position 380. And we'll move this stuff again. And I think we'll actually wind up putting the 3D text above this last frame here. So we'll actually move it like to right about there. Okay, so let's go back and see what this looks like. So we'll just play this through. Now it's moving a little slow because it's rendering it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is fine-tune the actual video panes. So we're going to see where that first one where he turns and faces the camera, it's not happening quick enough, so we want him facing the camera right about there. So now we're going to go select his shaved beard here, and we're going to move this trim point until we got him just facing the camera. Okay, and then we'll try this again. And I think that's pretty good. And then we've got this one here where this is the blowing the tannerite one, which is actually down at the bottom. You can change the order of this stuff so it's easier, but I've played with these enough, I kind of recognize them. So now we'll go here and we want this one, just as it's coming across, we want this one blowing. So once again, we're going to move the trim at the front here. Okay, so now we'll just let that play a little bit. Oh, not quite soon enough. All right, let's back it up a bit. Okay, so let's just adjust this trim a little more. So now I'm going to use the number box itself instead of the slider, because it'll move it with a little finer control. All right, I think that's a good spot. So let's just back it up a little bit. Okay, and that's showing what we want it to show. And now we're going to do the same with our log processor panel. And actually, you know, I'm going to go make a different adjustment here. Let's go back to our 3D camera position, and I'm going to change this. I don't actually like how fast it's moving vertically, so we're going to have our 3D text coming at the end. So we're going to do it like this instead. And that being the case, I'm going to have this moved a little further along here. Okay, so we might have to readjust the first couple things here. Let's just play this through. Yeah, I think that's going to be better. So take our log processor here and we'll adjust it. And now I'm going to go ahead and adjust the rest of these. And we'll come back when I'm done getting it all set up and ready to put in the 3D text. All right, so I've got everything adjusted so it's showing up in the right places. So now we're going to do a couple other little things. So I'm going to back it up just a little bit so that this skidder footage right here is front and center. And we're just going to take this stuff and move it over a bit so I got room to put a color correction in here. So we're just going to hit our control space bar, and if you're on a Mac it'll be shift space bar, and I'm just going to punch in CC for color corrector. And I had my skidder footage selected before I put that in, so it automatically inserted it. Okay, so now we're just going to go over here and we're going to give it a little more contrast, just to brighten that up a bit. It was looking a little washed out. And maybe we'll lift the shadows just a little, or yeah, let's deepen those shadows just a little bit. Not much, just subtle. And maybe we'll bump up the gamma just a little bit, just to brighten up the detail a tiny bit. Okay, so it's all pretty subtle. So let's just go back and play this through here again. Yeah, it's definitely looking a lot better on that skidder footage. Okay, and just because I'm a little OCD, I'm going to move these back a little bit. Okay. Now there was another one I had some color correction on, but I'm not going to bother. I just wanted to show you the one so you knew kind of how to do it. And now we're going to put in our 3D text. So we're going to make sure nothing's selected. So I'm just clicking out an empty space here. And we don't have to be on any particular frame because this isn't going to be animated at this point. Control spacebar. And we're going to punch in text. Okay, so text 3D. Okay, so we're just going to pipe that into our 3D merge. Just need to zoom in a little bit here. So we can see a bit better. Okay. Now in this particular case, I'm using the guy's channel name. So Loves Loud Cars. And we're going to change the font here. Now in this particular case, I'm using Cooper Black. And you can find places to download this off the internet if you want to use this font. But the actual font we're using doesn't much matter. And you can see it's kind of stuck over here. So we're just going to move this. And it's a little on the large size. And you can see, you can kind of partially see it through that 3D plane, which means it's right at the same point in space, which is fine. So we're just going to reduce the size here. And we want it about the right size so that it'll pretty much fill the screen. Okay. And I'm just using my middle mouse button there to when I was moving the whole 3D thing around. Okay, so we're just going to kind of tune this a little bit until it's the size we want. That looks pretty good there. And we're going to change the color. Okay. And we're going to give it a little extrusion. And we have to give it some extrusion depth. Let's try a 0.02. And we're going to up the subdivisions to make it smoother. And we've got to give it a little bevel depth and a little bevel width. And we don't need to bevel the back. Now it looks like we're going to need to give it a little more depth here. Okay, and we might want to give it a little bit of rotation just so that it looks a little more like actual 3D lettering. And we're going to need to provide another light source here so that it actually looks a little better. But we're just going to, oh, got a little carried away there. Okay. Yeah, we don't want a lot of angle there. It just needs to be subtle. And we're going to change its position a little bit more. so that's kind of centered. Actually, I think in the original I lined it up with the edge. So let's just actually back this up a bit. Okay, so I actually had this lined up with the edge of this frame here. And then we'll animate it once we get to our 380. Okay, I'm actually not going to bother with the other light sources and stuff. This tutorial is getting a little longer than I wanted it to be. So I think I've got some other tutorials on handling light sources and stuff. If not, I'm going to be coming out with an advanced 3D text tutorial here pretty soon, where I show you how to make something a little fancy with light moving around and highlighting stuff on 3D text. So make sure you're subscribed and keep an eye out for that. So we're just going to do the basic animation here. So we're going to go back a little bit just to where it's going to start to go off screen. So let's back it up one more there. Okay, I think that's a good spot. So now we're going to set a keyframe for our X position. And now it's going to seem like it's standing still, which is what we want, when in reality it's not. But it's going to stand still in the viewport, but as far as its position in 3D space, because the camera is going to be moving, then we have to actually move the text. But we're not going to make any movement to it yet. We've got to go back and adjust our 3D camera. So we're going to select that again. And we're going to go to our frame 380. And now I've got to try and remember just what I was doing for positioning and when. We want this to continue off screen, and we don't want it to take too long. So if I go, say, 20 frames, that's 2/3 of a second at 30 frames. So I think that's probably pretty good. So then we'll move our camera a little more. And we don't need to move it any further than that. But we're going to go back to our 3D text here. And we want it to remain centered. So we're going to get that set just the way we like it. Okay, and then we're going to move a few more frames. Say another 30 frames, so this will take place over another 1 second of time. Oh, sorry, we got to go back. I forgot to set a keyframe for the Y position. So we're just going to set a keyframe there. Now we're going to move ahead our 30 frames. And now we're going to have this center in the screen. Now you notice on the original, the text looked very 3D and had some nice highlighting and shifted position a little bit so that it was no longer tilted. But that's something I'm going to assume that you know a little bit about how to use keyframes and move stuff around. So this is good for the purposes of the tutorial. And the reason I did this so early in the sequence when I've got so many frames left to go is I needed to leave a couple of seconds of time right at the very end for a transition I planned on using, which is it's a 2-second transition. So plus I needed to leave enough room for this to be up and visible for a little bit. But by leaving a few seconds at the end, it gives you some room to play with when you're actually bringing it into a project. So just something I've kind of discovered over time. Now we can go back out to the edit page here, and we will let this render out, and we'll see what it all looks like. So let's zoom out a little bit. That's done rendering out now. You can see the red lines are all blue. So let's see what this looks like. And it's all looking pretty smooth. Stuff's showing up in the right spot. Oh, it looks like we got a little tidying up to do on our text. So I'll just pop back into Fusion. And we'll select our 3D text. Oh, it looks like an extra keyframe got set in the middle here that we didn't. Oh, let's see what we got going on here. Let's see why this is. So I think what happened is, if we look at our camera 3D, it had 10 less frames of movement. Okay, I think we can just adjust a curve on that so that it doesn't move off screen on us. So we're going to grab our text 3D here, and I'm going to open up the spline editor. And to make sure that only the one tool is showing up, or the one node, you would go up here and go show only selected tool, which we already did. So now I'm going to show just my X offset. Okay, so I'm going to select this node here, and we're just going to move this handle, and this is going to adjust our curve. So we're just going to slow that down a little bit. Let's just back it up a bit. Okay, it's still going off screen here for some reason. Okay, so we can just adjust this other curve. And we'll just tweak and tune a little bit. Okay. Sometimes it can be a little finicky getting this stuff set just right. But you get the idea. Let's see how this looks here now. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for the purposes of the tutorial here. Now you could go in and readjust it frame by frame if you wanted to. I think that's actually what I wound up doing when I did this the first time. But that's simple enough for you to do. This is good enough for the purposes of the tutorial. So we'll just go back here and we'll let that re-render. I'll come back in a second. Okay, we're done rendering. And let's see what this looks like. And that's looking pretty smooth. Now the text isn't perfect, but you get the idea. And we've got enough time at the end so that when we bring it into a project, we can make whatever adjustments we want. Now what you would do is you would take this, normally you would just have this first part, add your sound and everything and render it out. So just as a reminder, we'll look again at my original with the sound and everything added and timed. Now I guess there was a little bit more of a camera angle there, but you get the idea. So it's pretty close. It's not exactly the same, but you can adjust it to whatever works for you. So once again, a shout out to ResolveCon, where I got the idea for this and ran with it. That was a great little conference for DaVinci Resolve. So as always, I hope you learned something. And if you found this useful, please make sure to subscribe and hit that like button and notification bell, all that good stuff. Thanks for hanging out with us today, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.